Check 1, 2. Let's see here. Are we live? Are we live? We live? I think we're live. All right, chat. Anyone here? I see some people are here. I think they're here. It says there are some people here. All right, we got some people. All right, so it helps for the people in chat to just kind of ping me every so often, say, you know, you're following, and let me know also if something's not working. That helps. Oh, I guess I'm looking over here. Good start. Still getting used to it. So, yeah, if something isn't working, the sound's messed up, there's clicking, there's anything weird, let me know. If there's something confusing and I don't explain it well, please let me know. All those things. All right, cool. We've got some people in here. Excellent. All right. Let's see. Today, I think I'm going to start with Rondo. I think that's kind of the topic that I asked around that people seem most interested in. So let's go over here and take a look at Mark Stein and his tweets. So Mark is a great journalist, known him for a very long time, works with the New York Times. Says the Clippers have interest in signing the Lakers' Rajon Rondo, league sources say, and are expected to pursue Rondo when free agency opens in November. And then he follows that up to say that the Lakers are naturally determined to re-sign Rondo, who played a huge role in their playoff run, but the Clippers are eager to upgrade at point guard. Rondo has said he planned to test the open market, which means declining his $2.7 million option for the next season. So this wasn't really unexpected. Maybe the Clippers part was. But Rondo declining his option. Rule of thumb, like if you've got an option like Gordon Hayward where you're getting like $30 million and it's a down year, or there's a lot of players like Andre Drummond with Cleveland. It's not a good year to be a free agent. So if you're making a lot of money, you're going to take it. And maybe if there's one free agent on the border of that, it's Evan Fournier with the Magic, where he's like $17 million in that range. And it's not 100% clear what he should do. But if you're looking at Rondo, a minimum guy, he's going to get another job at the minimum somewhere. At worst case, he's not going to not have a home in the NBA. Someone's going to re-sign him, the Lakers, the Clippers, whomever. So there's no reason for him not to opt out. And then there's also the opportunity for the chance to get more than the minimum, right? So someone like Andre Drummond, maybe he won't get as much if he leaves his money on the table. Fournier, it's debatable. For Rondo, he's set. What's up, people? I see you still coming in. Alfredo, how's it going? Laker Eric, Johnny Johns. Hey, what's up, what's up, JJ? Good seeing people in here. Let's see. So we're gonna talk about the Clippers and the Lakers, and I know I've been writing on the Lakers a long time and writing on the Clippers a long time, but the percentage of people who root for the Lakers seems to be higher. So I have a lot of Laker followers, but we are gonna stream all teams and all topics and kind of dig into there. And if you are a Laker fan or if you are a Clipper fan, it helps to know where the other teams stand, right? So if you want to go get Giannis, if you're any team, and you have to know, is he staying with the Bucks? So you have to know what the Bucks situation is. Is he going to go to Miami? Is he going to go anywhere? Is he going to go to the Lakers, the Clippers, wherever you want him to go? Because there are 30 teams out there. Every team would love to have Giannis if he leaves. You have to know what every other team is about. So that's kind of my approach to why I do this sort of thing. Oh, wow, someone from Manila, Momaku. And if I pronounce your names wrong, I apologize. I will say I put a tweet at the top. We're going to be using this document today. Let me know on sizing. Some people had mentioned it was a little small and a little hard to read on the stream last time. So I'm going to go back to 100%. It'll mean I'll have to do a little more scrolling. Hit me up on chat if it looks funky. Wow, Ireland. That's awesome. Appreciate all the support. It's tremendously cool. So let's take a look here real quick. This is the sheet we're going to work with today. And there are some links at the top, notably Basketball Insiders, which is where we're going to look at player salaries. And that's where I publish player salaries. I just updated, I think, 23 teams. I've got about 7 more to go to make sure it's 100%. And then we've got Larry's FAQ, Larry Kuhn's FAQ. This is, if you're learning about the salary cap, this is your starting point. And Larry actually has a course, an online course that you can take that is tremendous. I helped him prepare for that a little bit, do a little work, stuff for him for that. So go ahead and check it out. And if you want to learn how the CBA works, go here first. Obviously, come to me first, but go there first when it comes to your own research on your own time. A lot of information there. And then the third link up here is the actual CBA can be found on the NBA-PA's website. That's the Players Association. What's up, Sam? David B., I got a random question. What's the max the Lakers can pay Markieff Morris? Non-bird is 120. Yes, that is a good question, and we will get to that hopefully in this stream. Probably try to make some time for that. That is a good question because I had to actually just double check that myself to make sure I got the right answer on that. So that is a good question, and we'll answer that. And if I don't, remind me on Twitter or not, and we'll definitely answer that. Okay, so and then also if you have the inclination or the ability, it would be tremendous to subscribe on Patreon with some sort of monthly donation or a one-time donation to Venmo. That would be awesome because I got 3 kids and a wife and an expensive life just because they have to eat, apparently. So, that's part of it. Also, my email, if you have questions and whatnot, happy to do it. You'll also notice that we've got a homepage on this Google Sheet. You can't see that on stream. But you can see previous tabs. So what I would recommend is open this up. The link is in the chat, and I'll put it in one more time. And this is a great place to follow along and see the actual formulas or whatever it is, or you could look at it yourself instead of having to rely on a screenshot, which can be a little bit trickier to see. All right, so where are we? What is the question? The question was obviously started with Mark Stein. And now we're going to take it and we're going to talk about Rajon Rondo. So Rajon Rondo, he spent 2 years with the Lakers. I'm just going to type this in. So if he opts out, the Lakers have what are called early bird rights. And you get them from 2 years. So if you're with a team for 1 year, you have non-bird. 2 years is early bird. 3 years or more is full bird, and that gives you the opportunity to pay them up to the max. So the Lakers can pay Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's been with the team 3 years. They can pay him the max if they want. I wouldn't recommend that, but that's it's not my decision. But I don't think they'll pay anything close to that. But Rondo, he has like these mini rights, right? He doesn't quite have the full version, and so we're gonna kind of get into what that means. And so what we're gonna do first is we're going to take a look in the actual CBA itself. If I can jump over here. And so this is from that link that I showed you in the sheet. It's on the National Basketball Players Association website. And what you can see, let me move this chat over here. That, and give me a second to space my screen properly so I know what I'm doing. Hopefully this, okay, there we are. Okay, so you can all see that. What's up, James from England? Okay, cool. Wow, bedtime. That's right, it's 3:30, so it must be, 12 hours? I don't know. How many hours? No, it must be 9 hours different. I think it's 9 hours different over there. No, 6 hours. 6 hours. I'm way off. Okay, so this is the CBA, and if you notice this by article, I did the homework for you. We're going to jump to page 199. And that didn't quite get there. 199. Almost. Well, so I probably should have pulled this up beforehand. All right, take 2. 199. All right, now lesson learned for the next stream. Have it pulled up. I wanted it to be like I'd show you the top of the CBA, and then we scroll down together, and it would just be a simple find, but apparently not. So there's a lot of 19. Makes sense. A lot of years, right? All right, did we get there? We got there. Okay. All right, let's make this take up the full screen. Make sure that looks right. Does that look right? I don't think so. I think that looks funky. Give me a second to size this properly. Move it down to this. Okay. How does that look, people? Chat, let me know. All right. Oh, it's 11:34. Yeah, so 11:34. So it's 8 hours. Okay. 8 hours different. I don't know time zones. Did you have a time change recently? I think it changes based on date. It's not all the same date. I know we have a time change this weekend. So they went back. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't understand this daylight savings time. It's a mess. So, all right, here's the this is the CBA. We're looking at the early bird rule. And I want to make sure you can see this, chat, so let me know if you can. Let's see here. I'm scrolling up. Let's see if that takes. Okay, if the player is an early qualifying veteran free agent, the new player's contract must cover at least 2 seasons. Okay, so early qualifying veteran free agent is early bird. There's no mention of the Larry Bird, Larry Bird rights, full bird rights. They're not using that term in the CBA, but early qualifying veteran free agent is the early bird. So if Rondo, the first thing we've learned here is if Rondo comes back to the Lakers via his, I guess I should jump over to this screen here. If Rondo comes back to the Lakers via his early bird rights, he'll have to sign for at least 2 years. Okay. So that's the first lesson. Now, what's interesting is that's something that was an issue with Kevin Durant in Golden State, where they had early bird, and they could have paid him a certain number via early bird, but they would have had to do a 2-year, and he wanted the ability to opt out and to have a 1-year, so they couldn't give him a contract via early bird. They had to give him non-bird, which is the 1-year version. So they basically gave him a lower raise, lower money, less money, which he could have taken more if he wanted to stay longer, but obviously he wasn't committed to their staying long term. So he took a shorter deal and he took a lower money deal because of this issue. But let's get back to the CBA right here and get through it. Let me know again on chat. I'm checking the stream out here and there. Let me know if there's a problem. Hey, what's up, Justin? The Chris Paul rumor. I don't think it. How would it affect the Clippers? I don't know. I don't think the Lakers would be caring how it affected the Clippers if they got Chris Paul. They would be thinking about being good if that was their decision. It would mean a lot, I think, if they did that, it would mean a lot to LeBron, I would think. He would be the one who would want to play with the godfather of his child. But that's a lot of money, and it's a difficult thing. And if they push the season out up to too early, then it might be difficult to even do technically. And I know that's a very hot button issue there. So we're not going to talk about Chris Paul today, maybe another time. Let's kind of stick on our less expensive veteran point guard. So going back to the document itself, right? Let me make sure this is right. Okay, we're good. It says, so 2 years, we've established that. And then they can get up to the greater of 175% of the regular salary for the final salary cap year covered by his prior contract. So what does that mean? That means that if we come back over here, let's take it. I'm going to pull this up, and I'll show you the Lakers page shortly, but we're going to just take a shortcut, and I'll copy it in over here. Okay, there we are. This is Rondo, okay? So this is 2019-20, and this is 2020-21. So this is his player option. So we're assuming that he opts out. Assume he opts out. And then basically what we're looking at is his previous salary. And then we're going to multiply it times 1.75, 175%. And we do that, and we get that. So that is the most that the Lakers can pay Rajon Rondo by the first part of that paragraph. We haven't looked at the entire paragraph yet. So this would be option 1, okay? And now what we're going to do is we're going to get back and read the next part of this, okay? So that was A. So 175%, and it talks about bonuses, and we're not going to talk about bonuses too much. I don't want to get too deep into every little detail because then I'll lose half the audience. But let's get to B. So remember, it was the greater of, or B. Let me make sure I'm looking in the right spot. Okay, B, salary plus unlikely bonuses totaling an equal to 105% of the average player salary for the prior salary cap year. And then it goes into a little bit more detail on there's always a detail. This thing is always, it is a very complicated document. I'm just going to focus on this one part. 105% of the estimated average player salary. So let's go ahead and make sure I've got this. Okay. All right, let's take a look at what it is now. Estimated average salary. Okay, this is the 2019-2020. Okay, what I expect this to be, we're going to call this the EAPS for 2020-21. And then this is the EAPS, estimated average player salary, for 2019-20. So they take the average. They actually total up what every player made, and there's a whole formula to it. We're not going to get into that, but I expect that to be 10, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 for the year. And it might be a little bit different, but it's going to be in this ballpark. So this would be the, and this is 105% of the EAPS equals early bird max. Okay. So what we're going to put here is option 2 would be this number right here. Let's copy and paste that. Option 2. This is the EAPS times 1.05. And then this is the previous salary times 1.75. And the CBA says the larger of the two. Okay, so we're narrowing it down. We're sort of getting into what it might actually be here. So let's see if there's any other language in this document that might confuse us or change things or impact things at all. Okay, so let's scroll down a little bit more. So it says we got to B, and that's really all. So then there's a part 2. So there was a part 1 and there's a part 2. Let's see what part 2 says. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary, 2 years of service. Okay, so this is a reference to, I believe that's the Gilbert Arenas rule. So what we've got is a little part here that says something about a player being years of service is how many years you've been in the league. If you remember, if you're a Laker fan, Jordan Clarkson was actually potentially a Arenas rule player. Jeremy Lin was probably the most famous Arenas rule player, and it's not uncommon, but it happens. But it doesn't matter because Rondo's been in the league for like 30 years. So part 2 does not apply. So that's really it. This one paragraph with a little, I guess it's that's it, right? That's it, right? Yep, just that's it. Very little bit. There's some stuff in there we didn't really care about, but it really broke it down into just 2 parts. It's either 175% of his previous salary. Oops, wrong way. Try that again. Make sure I got that right. Okay. It's 175% of his previous salary, or it's 105% of the EAPS, the estimated average player salary, which is a whole computation that they'll do, and it will go up this year. Even if the salary cap remains flat, which I think it will, and we saw a report from Shams Charania of The Athletic that the league and the players union is pretty close to using more or less flat numbers. And that's what I've been projecting for, I don't know, a couple months now, maybe longer. And all the salary cap pages reflect that. So speaking about that, let's just jump over here real quick. Oops, I think we're on the wrong page. Try that again. Yeah, here we are. That was my Facebook, where I promoted the links. So try that again. There we are. Clippers, Lakers. Okay. And here we are. Okay. Still getting used to the technology. Only my 3rd stream, but I think we're doing just fine. Okay, so here's the Lakers page. And we see Rondo here. Okay. These are on Basketball Insiders. They're updated. They break down a bit of everything from their depth chart to their players with rights. And if we take a look, Anthony Davis takes up $32.7 million to have his rights. And we have Rondo. Rondo's going to take up a certain amount of their space as well just for having early bird rights. And then there's all these detail about their deadlines, transactions, and all this stuff. So good stuff if you are interested in the details and want to play with the numbers yourself. This is where you would get them. Here's the Clippers. And so we're going to get into the Clippers in a moment and kind of talk about what the possibilities are. But if you want to find these numbers for yourself and not just wait for me to stream on a specific player, you can make your own stream. Or you could have fun with it yourself. That's where you would get it. So we talked about the CBA, and now we're going to jump up to here and get into the meat of this. Okay, so let's talk about the Lakers first. And there's an issue that we covered in our first stream that has to do with the tax line. And if we use the tax line that that was used by that was mentioned by Shams, right? If we go by a flat tax where it hasn't changed, then we're going to assume it's 132.6 million. And so what the first stream was about, and it's on my feed, and you can find it. And if you can't find it, hit me up. If the tax is low enough, so we're now going to assume it's this figure, and if the Lakers are paying Rondo enough, and if they're paying KCP enough, then they're going to run into trouble. They're not going to have that full exception to spend. So let's start with that. What are the exceptions? All right, and let's pull it up right here. Okay, so we've got 3 exceptions that we're really talking about. These are the primary exceptions, primary spending exceptions. So these are for new contracts, exceptions for new contracts. Okay. So what we have here is these are for the MLE. Let's call it the non-taxpayer MLE. Let's just call it here NT, non-taxpayer MLE, and we'll call it we'll type it here, non-taxpayer MLE. We'll call this one the taxpayer MLE, TMLE. This is the taxpayer. And then this is the biannual exception. Okay. The first one triggers a hard cap. If I can type, triggers a hard cap. Left out the word cap. 2, 3. Okay, and the third one does as well. No hard cap. So this is really the key. If a team uses their taxpayer mid-level, they can spend up to as much as they want. Hold on. They could spend into the tax. They could spend $200 million if they wanted. But if they spend 9.2, or if they spend 5718001, this is more than the TMLE. Therefore, it's part of the NTMLE. Therefore, hard cap. Does that make sense so far? All right, I'm trying to keep up with the chat. It's a little tricky here. I see some good questions and some good comments. So we'll talk about that in a moment. I'll go through those certainly before we're done. All right, so let's take a look at the tax line. So this is the current tax line. So this is the current tax line of 132, and we're assuming that this is going to be the same tax line for both this season and for the next season. So if we assume this, so this is for 2019-20, and we're assuming for 2020-21. The tax line is fine. You can go over the tax line. What happens is if you use this NTMLE, the non-taxpayer, we're not really worried about the biannual yet. We'll talk about that later a little bit. But there's going to be a hard cap above that. So this is the issue. And we're sort of repeating some of the lesson from the couple weeks back or a week back whenever we started doing this. And so if the Lakers use their non-taxpayer mid-level, or if the Clippers use their non-taxpayer mid-level, then they're going to have a hard cap. And if so, they can't go over that number there. So that's the kind of the key starting point here. And so let's start with, or rather change gears and jump on over to the Clippers. Now they have a lot of decisions to make. But I was just on my podcast last week, or on Tuesday, a few days ago, with Josh Martin, Hollywood Hoops. And we were talking about how badly... I think that's what we were talking about. Yeah, I think we were talking about how badly the Clippers could use. Yeah, we talked Clippers. They need a point guard, like flat out. And I know they need some size, and we could talk about Montrezl Harrell and some of the issues, and we could kind of talk a little bit about that. But ultimately, I was saying, and Josh was agreeing, that they needed someone like Rondo, but probably younger. But that they're actually going after Rondo is pretty funny, because we were like literally just talking about that. So here are some of the numbers so far for the Clippers. Okay, and actually we're going to move them over a little bit, and we're going to count it out. All right, oops. Bear with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see if this fill handle will work. All right, 15. Teams can go up to 15 players. Now, if they're dealing with a hard cap, they might not. They might go to 14 or 13 even. Okay, so we're not worried about cap room. So we're going to get rid of that number. But we are going to worry about we're not even worried about the tax, because it's not our money and we don't care what they spend. But what we do care is what can they spend, right? If they can't spend that, that's a problem. If they don't want to, there's nothing we can do about that. It's up to the teams to decide how deep into the tax they're going to get. So this is going to be total salary. I think I need to just this would be the hard cap. Only if they use the NTMLE or BAE or sign and trade in. But we'll talk about those later. Okay, let's make sure this works. Got all the formulas right. I'd rather build these out. I could build it out ahead of the stream, but I like people to see kind of like what I'm doing, how to get there. So it kind of helps you, understand how to get there yourself, right? If you see me do it, you can look at the spreadsheet that I've got here, and you can kind of make sense of what the heck is going on. Maybe a little bit better than if I just plop a bunch of numbers down and move too quickly. So I'd rather go a little bit slowly, and if that means the stream's a little longer and you got to go, you can always watch it later. I understand that. Also, teams can trade, right? So there's always the possibility of teams trading. And we don't know what the Jermichael Green is going to do. He's a player option. We're going to assume for the moment that he opts out. Okay, let's just take him out and say opts out. There's another number on here to note in Joakim Noah. He is not guaranteed. He's someone they can actually trade for value if they guarantee his salary. But we're going to assume for the moment that he's not a part of this. So the Clippers, we're going to say they go after Rondo, and they give him the max that they can give him. Now, they don't have cap room. We don't even have to get into it to compute their if they have cap room or not, because if the cap is 109 and their total salary is 109, then the eyeball test before we even dig into it shows that they're over the cap. So that's not a question. They're not going to have cap room to go after Rondo. But you see that right there, 109. And the cap's 109, so not even worth talking about. But if we're going to go after, if you're the Clippers, Rajon Rondo, and you're going to spend this NTMLE, we now have a hard cap. Now, they also have to give him a 2-year deal because, oh, no, they don't. I'm sorry. They can go 1 to 4 years. It's the Lakers with their early bird who have that issue. All right, so they're at 118. These numbers are not subtracting. Let's try that again. Okay, so they have $20 million to work with. So they need to round out their roster. They are paying Rondo the most that they can pay him. And they have a hard cap now. So here's the issue. What about Montrezl Harrell? What about Marcus Morris? What about Jermichael or equivalent? And that's 13 players. So let's say they go to 14. Just a guy. Jag. All right. So if we look at this real quickly, what is Marcus Morris going to make? Well, they can pay. They have Morris's non-bird rights. And we're not going to look it up in the CBA, but they can pay him up to 120% of previous salary, which is a max of 18 mil. Now, I don't think he gets 18 mil, but let's say that he gets, let's do 13 million. Made up number. Oops, wrong player. Drop that there. As you can see, we're getting really close to this hard cap already without even dealing with Montrez. Now, Montrez wants to be paid. He was the sixth man of the year. And let's say that he gets $18 million. I don't know if that's what he gets. They may not even keep him. They may trade him, sign and trade, who knows. But made up number. As you can see, this is illegal. Okay? So the answer here is that, yes, the Clippers can pay him up to $9.3 million, Rajon Rondo. That's the yes. The no part of it is they're going to have a hard time keeping Montrez and Marcus Morris, JaMychal Green opting in, filling out the rest of their roster. And yes, they can make trades, but I mean, are the Clippers really going to be dumping Patrick Beverley's $13 million and making all kinds of trades and shedding salary to get Rajon Rondo? That doesn't make any sense. Just to pay him 9.2. So we're gonna. I think what we've concluded is that, without really knowing everything, this may not be a practical number for Rondo, even if the Clippers go cheaper with Montrez and Morris. So they can do this, but common sense would probably say they don't. I don't even know if Rondo is worth that kind of money to them. So what that means, and we're going to redo this real quick. Copy and paste. And we're going to switch out this number for Rondo. Okay, now there is no hard cap, so it doesn't matter. No hard cap. This is the non-taxpayer ML. Oh no, this is the taxpayer MLE. So what the Clippers can do is they can give him a 3-year deal. Let's say they wanted to make up for it, the shorter money in the first year by giving him 3 years. That would be 5718, 123. We multiply that times 1.05. Multiply that times 2 minus that. There we go. Okay. Give it a little formatting, make it beautiful, and sum it up. So the Clippers can give Rondo a 3-year, $18 million deal. Rondo for 3 years, $18 million. That's kind of a way of saying we can't pay you $10 million now, but we'll pay you 3 years, $18 million, and maybe give him a player option, maybe do something like a partial guarantee in the last year, but a good guarantee, so that they can say, okay, we'll probably keep you for a couple years, and then we'll maybe let you go after 2 years, and it'll be like a $4 million guarantee. So basically, we're going to pay you $4 million in that third year for nothing. Like, there are ways around the rules to sort of that are legal, that are ways of compensating. You're not technically supposed to do what I just said. You can't have that conversation really, where you're making future deals and future, but they do that, and so whatever. No, I did Morris for $13 million. I'm looking at the number. No, I put that in the wrong line. So Marcus Morris, $13 million. I don't know the exact number, but I figure that put him down for above the mid-level because there are other teams offering about that 9.3. So Morris could be 12. He could be 10. It's not really the point. It was more to just illustrate very easily, very quickly, at that money for Rondo, the Clippers are in a hard cap situation and butting up against it. So there are ways to get out of that by making trades and trim your roster. I don't know if there are a lot of takers for Rodney McGruder, or certainly they would find someone to take Shamet, but what are we talking about? It's not like we're trying to fit in an all-star player currently. Rondo is an all-star. He's just many, many years ago all-star. So they're not going to be doing crazy stuff to get Rondo, in my opinion anyway. So yeah, I think they'll pay the tax. I don't think this is in the tax, but hard cap, not a problem. Wasn't triggered. So I think we have our answer as far as the Clippers side of it. Right, so we've got the Lakers side of it. We have two options. And so this is really the answer here. So let's now punch in the Lakers real quick. All right. And I know that I know there were some people. Yeah. Ari, how am I supposed to Ari in chat says that he'll come back when I'm talking Lakers again. How am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to tell him that I'm talking Lakers again? I know I've got a lot of Laker fans who follow my stream and follow me on Twitter and all that. And that's great. But we are going to cover all the teams, and I think if you're a Laker fan, you need to know what the other teams are up to, flat out. And if you don't, then you don't have enough information to understand your own team, flat out. We're not going to worry about, for the Lakers, again, the cap, right? We're not worried about the cap. We're not assuming they're under the cap. So let me punch in the numbers, copy that from here. Okay, so these are the salaries for the Lakers. I'm going to assume that Anthony Davis resigns. And he resigns for the max. Let's put him in. I have the max at 32,742,123. Resigns at max. I'm also going to punch in JaVale and Avery opting in. And again, we don't know what's going to happen. And each of these numbers changes. I'm going to keep them this blue color, assuming they opt in. Actually, this should be the same color. Let me copy that. 32,742. 32,742. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So we have cap holds. We don't care about cap holds because we're not worried about the salary cap. In fact, we're not worried about that at all. Oh, let's drop in Dang, and we'll talk about Dang in a moment. I did a whole stream on it, I believe, last week. But we'll just talk about what would happen if he was off. So this is the total. This is the hard cap. This is what we're not caring if the Lakers get into a luxury tax. We're not worried about their willingness to spend money. We're talking about possible. What can they do? Not will they, what are they willing to do? We're going to assume that for a LeBron James team that they're willing to get into the tax, and that the Steve Ballmer's willing to get into the tax. So let's see if they have a hard cap. They are under. So now here's where we start to get a little tricky, right? So Rondo. We decided, and I'll copy these from here, option 1 and option 2. If you remember from above, the first part of our discussion, yikes, let's try that again. Paste special. There you go. Okay. Okay, so there are two numbers. This is the one. So this is what the Lakers can pay Rondo. Rondo, 10, 100, 1, 2, 3. Early bird max. Now, they don't have to pay that, but they can. And what's interesting in my mind, and we'll talk about this, I think, in our conclusion a little bit. Rondo Clippers. Make sure this is visible. And Rajon Rondo Lakers. So do the Lakers need to pay $10 million if the Clippers are only offering 5.7? This is the Lakers max. Maybe Lakers can do 7.5. Just beat the Clippers number. Is that's 75? Try that again. Get rid of one of these zeros. Okay. So there you have it. So they can pay as low as the minimum. They can pay as low as really again 2,564. I guess they could. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. We're talking about the absolute lowest. Let's copy that in. Excuse me. Pardon me. Okay, so the least they can do is this. The max they can do is that. Beating out the Clippers. So, you can compromise. Who knows what the exact number is? But let's stick with the absolute. They want to reward him. They're just so enamored by how important he is to winning in the playoffs that they're going to give him the most possible. Well, we also said that they have to give him a 2-year deal. So what a 2-year deal required? 2-year deal early bird. So Rondo would have to get, and let's say we want to give him the lowest raise possible. Lowest raise possible. And the shortest deal possible. The Lakers would actually have to do this is the minimum max deal they can give him. Does that make sense? Thank you, Ari. Okay, Ari's back because I'm not talking Clippers anymore. Sorry. All right, so does that make sense? The minimum maximum deal they can give him. What that means is that they can pay him $10 million in the first year and decline it another year, and that's the lowest they can pay him on a 2-year deal if they're paying him the max at 10-1. But what's interesting is the second year does not have to be guaranteed. So they can do like a $19.4 million 2-year deal, of which only $10 million is guaranteed or whatever. And I suggested that the Clippers could do Rondo for 3 years at $18 million. You could argue that maybe the Lakers feel some pressure to match that in total, but that's a different story. So you could say that, well, if the Lakers are paying functionally a 1 year because year 2 is non-guaranteed, non-G, right? Make sure you can see that. So if the Lakers are paying functionally a 1-year deal to Rondo for $10 million, they're signing him for 19, but the second year is non-guaranteed, all right? Technically, he's getting a $10 million contract compared to an $18 million contract with the Clippers. So it's not always black and white. And some people, depending on where they are in their career, are actually worried about the gross that they're getting for as much as and as long as they can. So Rondo, in theory, could be looking at 18 mil Clippers versus 10 mil Lakers if the Lakers are only willing to give guaranteed money in year 1. So they can give him it's kind of a cheat around the rule, but it's not really cheating. It's just a funky way around the rule. I hope you can all see that. Let's scoot that over a little bit. And again, look in the document itself. This is all accessible for you to look at and to reference anytime, even if you're watching this, if you're not watching this live and you're watching it on replay, you can access all this. So, but flat out, the answer is yes, the Lakers can pay Rondo more. That's like if the Lakers want to pay Rondo more, they can. If the Clippers really, really want to pay Rondo $10 million a year, they can. 9.3 mil starting. But that's really, really difficult for them to do so. Hard cap. And the Lakers have a similar kind of problem. And so let's jump into that. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit here. And we'll just pull this down. Okay, so let's say that they do sign Rondo for, what was the number I said here? 7.5. And they're doing this because they're competing against the Clippers. Oops, early bird. Right, so and if they're only offering 7.5, we talked about how maybe if they were weighing if he's weighing 18 million versus 10 million, now he's weighing 18 million versus 7.5. You could see there's a conceivable path where Rondo's more comfortable going for 3 years to the Clippers than 1 year to the Lakers for whatever. He's getting more in year 1 with the Lakers, but he's getting more money overall, and that could matter. I can't say either way. There's a few other things to talk about with the Lakers, though, and this was definitely covered in more depth in the stream from a couple weeks ago. But let's say they're paying KCP 12.5. Okay, and that's fine. They paid him. There's no hard cap. They've done nothing to trigger a hard cap. Where we're starting to get into the issue is similar to the Clippers. If we were going to plug in, we have these two choices. Actually, let's include all three. Okay, so if they did also include this number and the biannual, which is a smaller contract, but it's bigger than the minimum, as you can see, they are now over, and this is illegal because they have a hard cap. Because of NTMLE, and BAE. So that doesn't mean that you have to use both, right? They could use that, get rid of that, and just use one, but it's still an issue, as you can see. So some of this can be alleviated if they traded JaVale. Let's say they traded JaVale to the Blazers, who need a backup center if they don't pay Whiteside, and they have a trade exception big enough. And so that would be an easy transaction. I don't know that they want to do that. I don't know that JaVale opts in. They could trade Avery to another team. But if they're going to keep Dwight, if they're going to keep Markieff, and you start adding the pieces that they want to keep, and they have their first-round pick, I included that. I left off Quinn Cook. Quinn Cook has $3 million, but he's only guaranteed $1 million. So if they were to stretch his contract, it would be 3-3. Actually, not even if. Let's say they don't stretch it. This is unstretched. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Unstretched Cook. You can see that there's more money piling on really quickly, and that's just what make sure I got that in there. Okay, so that's kind of the issue here. If they're spending all this money on Rondo and all this money on KCP, and Avery sticks around, and JaVale sticks around, now you're running into more of an issue, and you're not able to spend as much money, and that puts the Lakers in that $5.7 million exception range. So let's just take a minute and just assume that they trade JaVale or they opt out. Let's make it easy. Avery opts out, JaVale opts out, and they trade Quinn Cook to the Hornets or something, a team with cap room that has no problem, and they include the rights to somebody. Nothing of note, but Quinn Cook is gone just to get his money off. We're trying to see, is there a way to maximize all this? Well, you're still paying Rondo this money. You're still paying KCP that money. And let's say they don't use this biannual and they only go after, they bring in somebody really nice veteran player at $9.5 million or $9.3 million. You can see that they're kind of in the ballpark of that. Let's see if I'm forgetting anybody. Well, they have to bring back, let's say they bring back Dwight. And we're going to look at Dwight. Dwight made... let me get what he made last year. Dwight can get up to this amount. He has non-bird rights, so 1.2. 1.2 non-bird, 1.2 or 120% of previous salary. So Lakers can pay this amount. I don't know that that's the right amount, but that's the amount we're going to plug in. He might need more, but let's say that that's the number. And then who asked about that earlier about Markieff? I'll look through the chat real quick. All right, let's jump over here. Just a moment, see if I can find it in the chat. This is where I have the chat screen. Okay, David B. All right, David B. We're finally getting to your question. Oh, the Louisville people. Yeah, I've heard, and I don't know if this is what ends up happening. The buzz is that the Raptors are going to play in Louisville this year. I don't know if that's going to happen. I know there's some issues with some of the social justice issues with Breonna Taylor that would preclude perhaps the NBA wanting to be there. Excuse me. You like my big giant cup? It's anyway. We have cups coming. Our cups ran out, and they broke or something. They aged out, so we've got new cups coming. I'm using this is for I think this is for what do you call it? A shake machine or something. I don't know. All right, let's stay on track. So Louisville, I think, is probably the answer for the Raptors, but there could be some problems, understandable problems with that from an NBA social justice point of view. So I'm not going to lock that in yet. But Louisville's a city that aspires to get an NBA team, has an NBA quality arena, has some really strong backing. and is on the short list of teams that could end up with a team. I know a lot of people think Seattle, they think Vegas. There's always a lot of excitement if you can get that to happen, but you have to ask what team is moving, and that's a whole other problem. I don't know. I don't know which teams are willing to move right now. So, but we'll talk about that on a stream, maybe on a different day. I would say that expansion, I wrote about this, and maybe we could talk about this on another stream. I wrote some articles on Bleacher Report about expansion. That might be the answer for a lot of things, especially getting money into the NBA, given how difficult times are. So, all right, but let's get back to our math at hand. The question was on Markieff. Markieff signed midway through the season for the disabled player exception, which paid him 1.75. Okay, let's make sure you can see that. All right, so Markieff made that. Now, the minimum for Markieff last season, this is via the DPE, disabled player exception. He was 8. He was 8 YOS, years of service. So let's pull up real quick what that meant. 8 years of service. This is the minimum for an 8-year service player. This is the normal minimum. However, the min prorates down. He signed late. The DPE was greater than the prorated remainder of the min. So he made more than what he would have otherwise made. But what you actually do is you take the next minimum amount for someone like this to figure out what his non-bird rights are. So he is now, this is 2020-21 for minimum for a 9 YOS because his years of service will increase by 1, right? Make sure you can see that. There we are. Okay, so if we were to take a look at that, non-bird is 120%, so we're going to multiply it times 1.2. So that's what the Lakers have. So that should answer your question from early in the chat. I think it was David B or something like that. So that is the Markieff number. So let's say that they bring back Markieff at 2797912. And that's assuming these players, Dwight and Markieff, are willing to return at the minimum. And the question is can the Lakers field this roster, right? Is this legal? We're starting to get into illegal territory. We're really darn close. They're going to need to sign a veteran. Let's say that they sign, and there's, I don't want to get into potential names, but let's call this just a guy. Now they're right there. I think technically KCP, I have to double check this. I think his number, well, no, because his incentive doesn't matter. I was going to say he hit an incentive mark, so if he opts in, his number's higher. But that wouldn't matter because he's signing a new one. So technically, this is a roster that works. Doesn't give you much room for addition, right? It doesn't help you if you need to add a 14th player, even if it's a rookie min. 838 898 310. Change that color. Well, now I think actually this would be a problem too, because for tax purposes it would be that. So we'll do another just a guy. I'm not going to get into that rule, but now this is illegal. So you have to take off a mil or two. We're starting to run into issues where you have to dig into KCP's salary, Rondo's salary, or you need to trade someone else. But you could say Lakers trade or draft an overseas player to get the money off. These are potential ways of making it work. They could get this 1.9 million off if they signed a player who plays overseas for a year, or if they traded that pick. So is it possible for the Lakers to pay KCP 12.5, Rondo 7.5, and still use their mid-level, their full mid-level, and keep Dwight and Markieff? And the answer is yes. At these numbers, it is possible. It's hard. And we're assuming that JaVale opts out and that Avery opts out. And if they opt in, then the answer becomes no. And so if you were to ask me what I think is going to happen, I think, let's scroll down a little bit. I think the Lakers end up a TMLE team, and the Clippers end up a TMLE team, which means that both have 5.78 to spend. So what does that mean for the Lakers? We're almost done, I think, with our, at least with this part of our stream, and we'll see if there's anywhere else to go. I don't want to keep you guys too long. But let's say they use their TMLE, 5718123. Yep. They no longer have a hard cap. Doesn't matter. Can spend as much as they want. So now we're talking about LeBron, Danny Green, their first-round pick, Kuzma, Caruso, THT, AD back, Rondo back, KCP back, a $5.7 million player, $3 million, $2 million. And now let's go back in time. And I think I have them up here. And these guys stick around. Instead of just a guy, you got these guys. So now I don't know that the Lakers will pay this much, but they can. But the challenge is that they now only have this. So if you aspire to get Joe Harris, if you aspire, let's put it this way, on behalf of the Lakers, because you're a fan and you are not working for the team, but you're aspiring that they get Joe Harris, or that they get Jeremy Grant, or that they get Danilo Gallinari, or someone else at, say, 4 years, 40 mil. More likely than not, they don't have that kind of money. More likely than not, they have this kind of money. Let's unbold that. And the most you can do here is a 3. So we saw that with the Clippers. It was like 18 million, wasn't it? Somewhere up here, 18 million. Lost track of it. Well, I'll have to wait. I'll look for it later. You guys can find it. Give it to me. We'll just recalculate it. This times 1.05. This times 2 minus that equals sum. Right, 18 million. So there you have it. So you're not going to get Jeremy Grant or Joe Harris or Danilo Gallinari potentially at a $9 million figure. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. You're certainly not going to get them at a $5 million or $6 million figure. So that's where we're running into issues. So yes, the Lakers can pay Rondo. Yes, they can pay KCP. Yes, they can outspend the Clippers to keep Rondo. They can keep Dwight, Markieff. They can keep even Avery and JaVale, but they can't also do those things and spend that full exception. So kind of to sum up, the Lakers can outspend the Clippers for Rondo, period. But not by much if the Clippers use their full MLE, which is, because this would be starting with Clippers and then early bird, 10, 100, 1, 2, 3, starting with Lakers via early bird, EB. So there isn't really a huge difference. Make sure you can see that. Okay. There's not really a huge difference in starting salary in a perfect world, I guess, where teams can do whatever the hell they want. However, we kind of went through the numbers. Neither is particularly, well, the Clippers having that much money is not realistic. and the Lakers paying Rondo and KCP, it may not be realistic for the Lakers to also have 9.3 mil to spend in free agency. Just to wrap that up, both probably have about 5.7. There you go. So that's kind of the answer of like the overarching stream idea. Yes, the Clippers can do it. Probably won't. Doesn't really make sense. Lakers can outspend them no matter what. The amount isn't that much, but more likely than not, the Clippers don't have that kind of money. And the Lakers do have some limitations. So we also talked about Markieff and how his cap hold is figured. And Dwight, we looked at the CBA a little bit, kind of some cool stuff. I'm going to just scroll back into the chat real quick. Let's take a look at the chat and see if there's anything I missed. All right, so we got David B taken care of. Thank you, folks. Whoa, Ari, it's 5:30 in Jakarta. Is that where you are in Jakarta? Wow. All right. Wanted to ask you about Chris Paul and Lakers, and we touched that on a little bit. Yeah, the Chris Paul thing is a definite possibility. It's really hard to do, and it only works one way right now. I could probably find a way to make it work more than one way, but it would take a lot. It starts with Avery Bradley opting in, and it starts with JaVale opting in, and if they don't opt in, it doesn't even work. Although you could argue you might be able to get there via sign and trade. So there's some crazy possibilities. All right, so earlier you had an article mentioning Lakers. This is from and 8376. Earlier you had an article mentioning Lakers might pursue Oladipo. If that happens, how motivated would they be to resign Rondo? If you think about it, so Oladipo, I'm not going to assume that. Well, here's how Oladipo would get to the Lakers. Oladipo tells the Pacers, "I'm not resigning. I need a trade," and then he makes, through his agent, a very public sort of statement, and then privately to teams that if you trade for me, we're not resigning. Similar to what AD did to get to the Lakers from New Orleans, because Oladipo is going into the last year, and if he's saying I need the max, and teams could be afraid to trade for him because number one, he's got injury issues. His performance wasn't as good because there were injury issues. If you're the Lakers or if you're another team trading for him, you're betting that he's basically Kawhi Leonard with the Spurs when he was unhealthy and he came back and the next year helped you win a title. Not to say that Oladipo is at that level, but you could at least make the argument he would be a nice young player to be with the Lakers for a long time. So this is the argument pro. To get there, he makes $21 million in salary. So let's just do a quick side note. Side question, Oladipo. He makes $21 million, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? So for the Lakers to get to that number, they need to basically send out this minus $5 million, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, $16 million. Or they could send out, let's see what this minus 100, 1, 2, 3, and then divide that by. Right, so basically they can send out 16 million. So this is the 125% calc. And so yeah, it doesn't matter. Let's delete that. Confusing things. So Lakers outgoing salary. So to answer the question, which was, would the Lakers want Rondo if they acquired Oladipo? If the Lakers sent out $16 million in salary, they're going to need to fill roster spots. So the answer to me would be absolutely. Like, that would be huge to have that kind. I think Rondo delivers something that makes LeBron's job work much more efficiently because if you watch the Lakers in the playoffs or even regular season, teams would load up the middle and give LeBron nowhere to run, nowhere to drive into. And you do a step back and shoot every so often you get hot. But by and large, those are not good basketball shots. And LeBron being that, at least by my estimation, he's one of the smartest basketball players that I've ever seen, certainly in the top of that. He knows those are not good shots, and I'm assuming that he knows that. But if the shot clock runs out, that's not a good shot. And if you pass the ball to somebody and they shoot an air ball, that's not a good shot. So he's basically taking the best shot available because the Lakers' offense failed. Putting in Rondo allows LeBron to play off the ball and have a 2-man or a 3-man game with Rondo, AD, and another player to get AD a good shot. Meanwhile, you've got LeBron on the weak side. And we've seen that at the end of Rockets games. We saw that in certain games against Miami, certain games against the Nuggets, where you can't load up your entire offense to stop LeBron if the Lakers' entire offense is going through Rondo and AD. That's why he's so important. And that's, to me, is why there were issues for the Clippers, because they didn't have the equivalent, and why they would go after someone like Rondo, because Patrick Beverley is a defense-first point guard. He's really not even a point guard. And the way he plays defense doesn't particularly translate to playoffs well, because he gets into foul trouble easily, because he's very over-physical. And regular season, you'll be fine with that. If you get in foul trouble, no one cares, no one notices. And the calls may be a little tighter in the playoffs. So he's in foul trouble in the playoffs. They're going to Lou Williams. Lou is not a point guard. He's a scorer. And so these were the kind of issues. They didn't have like a straight up, I don't care about my own scoring. I'll score a bit when I have to, and Rondo did a great job of that for the Lakers. But that wasn't the goal. And so a similar player for, look, if the Clippers could get Drew Holiday, that changes things dramatically. I don't think Drew Holiday is available to them, but it's certainly something that you could, if they could, that would be a game changer for the Clippers. But it's kind of the idea of like somebody who could set up and be a scorer or a setup man, and they didn't have that. And that's what the interest is. If you're the Lakers and you get Oladipo to bring it back into focus to what we're talking about, you still need that player. You have Rondo at the 1, Oladipo at the 2, LeBron at the 3, also playing the 1, and AD at the 4 or at the 5, and you put in Kuzma or a shooter. KCP is a shooter. You can go small. There's all kinds of ways you can operate. How do you stop that? That's a very, very tough team. Not to mention that Oladipo, when healthy, is a good defender and doesn't take away from the identity the Lakers have. I mentioned Kuzma. You probably have to give up Kuzma to get him, I would think. Lakers don't have any real picks. So real quick, I'll punch in just because we're here. You're probably trying to get there by doing this. Let's see if you can see that. And you're probably giving up a young piece here. So you're assuming that they opted in. Can't trade them if they don't. We're assuming they opted in. How close did we get? We didn't get all the way there, so we're short. We need to get to 16. We're short by about 3.2 million. Well, that's easy. Almost easy. Not quite easy. Just short. Make sure I punched it in right. You need to get to 16 million. You're short by 232. Need to fully guarantee. So he's 3 million out. Now, you might say, well, Talen Horton-Tucker, but he's on the Clutch brand. That's not an easy thing to do. That may not be something that they would even want to do. You could do Jared Dudley sign and trade. A 2-year, it'd be a 3-year deal. At the min, first 2 years the first year fully guaranteed, last 2 non-guaranteed. It would give the Pacers a hard cap. Pacers are not going to go into the tax, so I don't think they care about having a hard cap. Immaterial. Jared would have to agree to that. You could do the same with Dion. Dion, former Pelinka client, isn't he on Clutch? So I think I'm going to swap out Jared, and I'm going to put in Dion Waiters, because this is, let's say it's LeBron and Rich Paul as the mastermind of that, and they say, Dion, you're going to do this. Dion's going to do that. Not only does he get guaranteed money, so what would that be? That would be Dion is He's a 7, so he's an 8-year of service. So his 8-year service number would be, we already put that in earlier. So this is just a way to do it. Sign and trade. Pacers hard cap. And again, I'm not saying that this is what happens. I'm just messing with the numbers. At this point, they would have to only partially guarantee Cook up to 1087572. Did I do that right? Nope. What am I missing? 123. Oh, I'm looking at it backwards. So let's take him out. 912428. I was going the wrong direction. Okay. Need to partially guarantee. Well, no, he's already $1 million guaranteed. I'm losing my mind. Yeah, they got there. They don't even have to do anything. Partial guarantee already in. He counts as $3 million in to the Pacers in trade. And then the Pacers could cut him, and so you don't even have to renegotiate his contract at all as far as the guarantee amount. Works great. So, it's nonsense, but you asked the question. So it would take Oladipo forcing it, and I have no intel to say that he will. He might force a trade, but I can't say that he's going to force a trade to the Lakers. Equally, I don't know that the Pacers want Kuzma and those players as well. The Lakers are not giving up Danny Green. They could do Danny Green, and that would make it very easy as far as matching the numbers. And because this requires that Avery opts in and JaVale opts in. So we'll just put a note. If Avery and JaVale aren't opted in, Lakers can do Danny Green technically. That would be pretty easy to get to. The 16, I don't even have to run it. He makes basically right around there. Pull that up real quick just for Danny Green. He's almost all the way there by himself. Right? So easy to do a depot trade built around Green. Just some nonsense. Please don't aggregate this and say, hey, I did all that and said all that. Now Oladipo to the Lakers. Because that's, if I tweet something, that's what happens. It gets aggregated pretty quick. All right, so let's take a look. We're almost done here. Let's see. Looking at the comments. Derrick Rose. Okay, so Jonathan K28 says, what about Derrick Rose? Makes more sense. Here's my problem. Derrick Rose played with LeBron already, with the Cavs, and they traded him away. Are you giving up Kuzma? If so, I wouldn't trade for Rose. Here's the problem. The Lakers have, assuming most of these guys are back, right? This is their depth chart at the point. Let me see, where do I have that? I think I have that here. Pardon me for looking away. Let's see if I can bring that all the way over here. Okay. This is a theoretical depth chart, if I can find the Lakers version. Got all the depth charts laid out here. I've got it on Basketball Insiders as well, but I want it in this format here. Okay, so this is pre-Rondo, okay? Forgive a couple of the... Let's get rid of these. Okay, but now we add in Rondo too. Where are these minutes coming from? How do you fit in another player here? Let's look at it from this way, this angle here. Here it is on Basketball Insiders. Like, this is the existing team: KCP, Avery Bradley, Rondo, Quinn Cook, Danny Green, Alex Caruso, Talen Horton-Tucker, and I have Talen at the 2. He could play the 1. This is too many players. There's no minutes here. Like, we look at the free agents. Make sure you can see all this. So these are player options. The actual only free agents that they have, like, unrestricted, no options, are forwards and centers. Markieff, Dwight, Jared, and okay, Dion and JR. So if we leave out JR and Dion, how do the Lakers fit in Derrick Rose in this. If their identity is being a LeBron James team and he's their point guard, you surround him with defenders who can shoot a bit. Obviously not great shooters, but Danny Green, Avery Bradley, KCP, and then another point guard in Rondo who can alleviate the pressure. Cook is sort of a non-factor. He didn't play much. Taylor Horton-Tucker didn't play much. They'd like him to play now that he's gotten some experience. And then Caruso is like your MVP on the team, better than LeBron. All right, not quite, but you get the point. He's a valuable piece. They started him in the last game because he's such a valuable defender. You're gonna put in Rose, who's an older scorer. Okay, but where? Well, you have to trade out some of these guards, and where are those minutes, and how does he fit in that? So you could say, well, what about Oladipo? The idea is that Oladipo's fine. You're willing to make changes for somebody who you can invest in for the next 5 years, and be that guy to play next to AD long term. That's not Derrick Rose. So that's, if you're going to make a major change, we could talk about a major change about going for Chris Paul, because again, now you have a souped up version of Rajon Rondo, and you have Rajon Rondo, and so you've lost Avery Bradley in that. You've lost Danny Green in that. So now KCP slides over to the 2, and you pretty much have like reasonable Chris Paul, KCP starting at 1 and 2, backed up by Rondo. So Chris Paul, KCP, Rondo, Caruso, with minutes for Taylor Horton-Tucker, and the rest have been traded. Like that's your core guard core right there that is at a very high level, and it takes you 2 years. It doesn't solve the main issue of a running mate for AD beyond LeBron. And I know that, I forget who, I think it was on the Woj podcast, Rob Pelinka said something along the lines of they'd like a young star to long-term to pair with. And so, yeah, I know Laker fans got excited about that, but there are also 29 other teams who are really excited about getting a young star at guard. That's kind of like everybody wants those kind of players. They're really hard to get. Lakers have no picks to offer. Their only trade bait of real note is Kuzma. Veterans like Danny Green, Avery Bradley, if he opts in, whatever. And they have some good contracts. And then their 28 pick, which is not a great pick in this draft. It's not a great draft. And then, Caruso, I don't think anybody like LeBron wants to trade. I don't think they want to trade Taylor Horton-Tucker, and I don't think his value is that high yet. So, Lakers don't have a lot to offer. So they're going to need like a super special set of circumstances, which could be something like, let's go back to here. That could be something like Oladipo forcing it. It's going to have to be something like that, where you have a player who the team isn't going to extend. And I know that the Pacers would like to extend him, but it doesn't really make sense financially. And if they are going to trade him, the Lakers might have something to offer. It might need to be a 3-team trade. They might need to find someone else to go after someone like Kuzma. So, all right, I'm just going to go back to the chat. We've kind of gone over on other topics. I appreciate all the positive feedback. Really cool. It's really nice. It's Pat. Let's see. Thank you. Vinay, thank you. Dexter, when will the NBA's decision on Deng come? Well, right now the league and the Players Union are trying to negotiate having a season. So they're not worried about Luol Deng right now. Once we have that, it's like a month of examining medical records and maybe 2 months if it's really complicated. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I see it's Pat responded. It usually takes normal circumstances 6 weeks, a month. They need to basically prove that the Wolves in a way were negligent to even sign him. And that may not be easy to do. All right, so let's see. Eric should be. Thank you, Dexter. If any teams out there are looking for strategy guys, I'm open to it. I'm doing. I'm enjoying what I'm doing, writing for all the outlets that I write for and streaming for you guys. But open to talk. Let's see. We'll be I'm just reading. If the Clippers are paying Rondo, so Alfredo says it's the old ESPN trade machine. Are you talking about, is this a question? Okay, so poison pill provision. Alfredo Rodriguez is asking about the poison pill provision. There are several players right now who have poison pill provisions, which means they were given extensions and they haven't kicked in yet. So a ton of them. One of them is Buddy Hield. He's an interesting player because you never know with Sacramento. What if they wanted to trade him? And what if they wanted Kuzma? Luke wanted Kuzma back, etc. The Lakers could get there, and you say you're getting a younger shooter, not a great defender, but they could fit him in, and maybe that, being that he's one of the best shooters at his position, it's an idea. If they trade for him before next season, meaning the equivalent to July 1st, his money doesn't work normally. It's averaged out over his life of his whole extension and his current year. Makes it very difficult, but that all goes away as of July 1st. Now, we're not in July 1st. Well, we're well past July 1st. So let's say that's December 1st. Let's say the next season starts, the next year starts. The NBA year starts December 1st. The poison pill is gone. So poison pill doesn't have anything to do with anything right now. If you were using a trade machine that was going off of the numbers based on salaries of the current season, you're going to have a problem doing a deal for Buddy Hield. If you're going by his 2020-21 number, you're fine. Hold on a second. But also, on a side note, if he was traded before the start of next season, his poison pill amount is not clear. We have all these other players, but in his particular case, he didn't reach incentives. So the league and the players union would actually have to negotiate how to resolve the issue of Buddy Hield's poison pill value if it came to be. That's for those who are super into the cap and are really interested in minutia. His incentives, like his average salary, would be based on the actual salary cap number that he's in right now. But as of July 1st or / December 1st, his salary cap number is going to drop because that's how incentives work. They don't change the number until after the new year clicks. So the moment you click over to the new year, his numbers drop. If you trade him before then, you're taking the average of a salary that is in writing, but it's not actually what he's going to get. And so they could go by the actual salary with the incentives figured, or they can go by the cap number. The rules don't specify. And so if that was a trade, that would be something that the Kings and the league would have to, and the players union, because they'd have to agree on the interpretation. It would be a whole thing. All right, so let's see if there are any other questions. Dexter asks like a legitimate question, like, what do I think is the max that Lakers would spend on Rondo? I put in 7.5 as like making sure they're outpaying the taxpayer mid-level. I think that's a reasonable number. It's more than someone else could get by a couple million. That's generally like rule of thumb. If someone has 10, you give them 12, right? You're out overpaying, but not, you don't want to overpay, but you want to make the player feel good. You don't want to do like 10.5 if the other team has 10 or 11 is pushing it. You might be able to get away with it. Let's see if there are any other questions here. Some debate amongst the chat about the value of Rondo. Dexter asks the right question of how would a 2-year deal affect the Lakers' plans, and the answer would be is that if they are valuing cap space for 2021, which is a problem in and of itself because of LeBron's money, but let's say LeBron is willing to take less money, but they might be able to have some cap room, even if LeBron returns and AD returns, but it wouldn't be max money. But let's say you don't want to tie that money up into Rondo. The answer from our figures was that you don't guarantee Rondo. In the second year, it's non-guaranteed money. That's a loophole around the 2-year early bird requirement. So Justin Harris, who is definitely the guy you want to talk to if you're a Kentucky person, Kentucky Wildcats, all that. He says the buzz around Rondo is that he's going back to the Lakers. If the Lakers want him, which I believe they do, and if Rondo wants to come back, which I believe he does, then he's going to come back. I believe that Rondo would very likely to come back. Justin is keyed in. I've known Justin online for, 2 decades, from the early days. And whenever he says something about Kentucky and the buzz, I take it seriously. Not that it's going to happen because buzz is buzz, but I take it seriously that there is. I believe him when he says there's buzz. Doesn't mean that I believe the buzz, but I believe that the buzz exists. So if anyone out here thinks he's trolling, he is not. Boogie, someone asked, it's Pat asked about Boogie Cousins. The Lakers don't have any special rights for him, but they could give him the minimum. They can give him part of the mid-level. I don't think they're going to have their biannual. We talked about why not because of the tax line. But yeah, I think Cousins is a possibility. I think Tristan Thompson's a possibility. I think Nerlens Noel is a possibility. The last two because they're clutch, and Cousins because there's a relationship both with AD and LeBron. All right, let's see here. There's some other debate in the chat. I appreciate you guys chatting with each other. KCP a point guard. So Ari, the Lakers slot in KCP defensively as their point guard, as their starter. All through the playoffs, he was their starting point guard positionally on defense, and LeBron was their small forward positionally on defense. Offensively, LeBron is the point guard, and offensively, I don't know, KCP's a wing. He's a 2-3. There's not a lot of difference between the Lakers' 2 and 3 positions. They're wings, and so we've grown into more of a positionless basketball, and that works when you have someone like LeBron. So is KCP a point guard? No, I don't want KCP dribbling more than 2-3 times, if that. I'd rather him dribble than Danny Green, but KCP is not a point guard by any stretch. But that's the position he played for the Lakers, who just won a title, at least defensively. We need a wing defender, not a guard. So this is Fabricio Fontes. So if that is in relation to the Derrick Rose question, I agree. If you ask me, out of all the pieces that we talked about, what's missing, it would be someone like Mo Harkless or another, just a guy like him who can defend bigger forwards like Jimmy and Kawhi and Paul George and Tatum and whoever else you want to talk about. Big scoring wings. Because yes, LeBron can do it, and yes, AD can do it. But you don't want them to have to do it, and you're better off getting somebody whose job it is exclusively to do that. And so all their energy goes into that, and if they hit a few shots and set some screens and do a little bit on offense, all the better. But yeah, the Lakers do need a big wing defender, but I don't know exactly how that factors in, and if they're keeping Kuzma, and if they're growing Kuzma to be re-signed, I'm not exactly sure if there's a lot of minutes for a player there. So, but that is definitely an area that the Lakers could use some help. Going over the guard rotation, that was kind of the point. They don't need a guard unless it's like a game-changing guard. I would say Chris Paul is that, though not for a long period of time. Oladipo is that, but there is risk, and then the unlikelihood that he's even available. All right, thank you, Tyler. We're wrapping up here. It's Pat. I think there's almost zero chance the Lakers try to get off Danny Green to get Wesley Matthews, because Danny Green is a really good basketball player for this team. And while he's not perfect, and yeah, he made some mistakes and didn't hit a big shot, he's happy to do his job. He fits their length requirement. He can shoot, and his numbers were good. They weren't great, but they were good enough numbers. And it's not money. Yeah, if you were getting off of Danny Green's money to improve, yes, Wesley Matthews probably stays in Milwaukee or whatever. He's not an upgrade. He's basically, if you want a cheaper version of Danny Green, why? To save the Lakers' ownership money? If there's a reason to get off that money, sure. But Danny Green, works in what they're doing. Why would you mess with that? It makes no sense to go change that unless there's a reason. And if the reason is to get a better player, Wesley Matthews is not that. Timogen the Great says we need Grant. He can guard 1 through 4. We already established the Lakers probably only have $5.7 million to spend. Maybe they can get up to that $9.3 million, but the Nuggets are probably paying him $15 plus to stay. And if he doesn't stay there, it's probably because he's going to another team with cap room that paid him even more. So I don't think Grant works. The only reason I'll even utter his name in relation to the Lakers is because we all witnessed LeBron go talk to him after that series. And once LeBron's in someone's ear, LeBron has a certain amount of power. If they can find a way to solve the financial hurdle, I don't think it's going to happen, but certainly possible. All right, we're almost done, getting to the end of the chat. Do you think there's a chance that both Marcus and Markieff join the Lakers? Why would Marcus come? I don't see that. Like, the Lakers have AD, so there's only enough minutes for one power forward behind them, and the Lakers are already trying to figure out how to make that work with Kuzma, who's more or less playing the 3 now. Now you've got Marcus and Markieff, who are now, in this modern era, definitely 4s and not 3s. And they're going to compete with each other for the sparse minutes that Markieff just got. Not to mention that Marcus is going to want a lot of money that the Lakers don't have. Would they like to play together? Of course they would love to. They're very close. Wrapping up, Justin Harris, do you think the NBA with the losses will invest in the G League Select team? So yes, I think the G League Select team is part of the future. I think everything that was part of the past that is kind of interrupted is going to resume on some level. I don't know if we're going to have a G League season. I would say it's unlikely that we will. And so the first G League Select team is a washout. But there are a lot bigger things that are happening on this earth right now, especially in this country, that we're dealing with. And so we don't get what we want. We're dealing with a lot of problems. And the NBA is doing the best they can. I thought they did really, really spectacularly well to finish the season. But I do think the G League Select program they'll continue to invest in. So Javier Martinez asks, will there be a huge difference in basketball-related income if the season starts on MLK as opposed to December 22nd? So there was an article from a publication, and I guess I could say that, it was ESPN. It was Adrian Wojnarowski and I think Zach Lowe and some other people contributed. And there was some talk about they're going to make a lot more money, the league, by that 1 month. And there are logistical issues, certainly the Olympics and getting things back to normal. Some of the dates didn't add up to me in that article because if you say that I haven't asked the writers and they can explain it to me, so I'm not saying they did something wrong or anything. But I didn't understand it just as it was written. They were saying like if you start basically around December 22 versus whatever, January, let's just say January 22, whatever MLK day is, I don't know the exact date of that. Let's say it's a month later. They were saying the players would be available for the Olympics starting July 23rd if they start December 22nd. So if you figure they're going to be available for the Olympics, they also have to get to, was it in Tokyo or something? And then they have to like probably pre-quarantine and training camp. I mean, so, they'd have to be done pretty darn early. So are we saying that the season's over by July 1st? And then are we saying that if you delay the season by a month, the article said that the next season wouldn't start until September. So the math on the dates didn't add up to me personally. And then there was also a reference to the money that was sort of recouped and all that. And the article that couldn't have referred to basketball related income. So I would need to ask those writers if I had the opportunity to explain it because they use like a 9 something BRI or expectation, and the BRI expectation was always around 8 something. So I don't really understand the numbers as they were written. And there are other people who do what I do, who are people who study the salary cap, who were also perplexed by it. That's not to say it's wrong. It's just that we didn't understand. So I can't really speak on that in context. I think there's definitely a difference in money because the main issue is the TV deals. The networks really, 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 really want to start by Christmas. So that's ESPN, which is Disney, and ABC all together. And then there's TNT and NBA TV, our partner. I work for Turner, or I guess I work for Turner. I work for Bleacher Report that's owned by Turner, and Turner Sports is owned by Warner Media, and Warner Media is owned by AT&T. So technically, I work for AT&T. But when it comes down to like the networks, the players, and if you read Sham's article, I think it was in the Athletic, he talked to Michelle Roberts of the union, and she really eloquently and strongly expressed why the players aren't ready to go back by December 22, and they won't be pushed into that. That doesn't mean they won't accept that. It's certainly possible. I favor another month off, but we'll see. Wrapping it up, Timjan the Great, how do we fit Jeremy Grant in at $16 million a year? Really easily. Just let Anthony Davis walk, and the Lakers can go into cap room. But I don't think they're going to do that. The Lakers do not have $16 million. The only way they have $16 million is by cap room. They're not going to have cap room. It's just not going to happen. Just based on their guaranteed salaries, not even including the ones who might opt in. If they stripped it down to just the guaranteed players, they'd have to start trading other people. If you trade Danny Green for nobody and keep AD, maybe I can try to fit it in, and you let go of Rondo and all these other dudes. Just not going to happen. And not to mention that the Nuggets could then say, okay, well, we'll pay you 20. So Savage, I had mentioned, how do you feel about Lakers trading for Oubre? Value is low, but he's young with potential. I actually had said a few times recently that I think Oubre is a sneaky get for the Warriors with their trade exception. And I think someone wrote about it recently, maybe in one of the New York papers or something. Someone wrote, maybe somewhere someone wrote about linking Oubre to the Warriors because they have a trade exception that fits that math. You could look at the Suns and say, well, they should keep him. Certainly can make that argument. I would argue that I don't think he's staying there long term, and if he's not, then they should move him. And I don't know what they would get back from the Suns. They could get back one or two of their young players or something like that. For the Lakers, I mean, kind of. I'm not exactly sure how that would look. Oubre is young and he fits that defensive profile. Is he big enough and is he strong enough to guard against Kawhi? And that would have to be proven to me. Or if the Lakers were to decide that and the Suns were willing, if that's what they were believing, then interesting. I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. It's Pat. I only suggested doing that they can get a cheaper replacement and free up cap. So the Lakers are not going to have cap. So if they got rid of Danny Green and went after like Wesley Matthews, it's not going to save their cap position. They're not going to have cap room. Not with AD and Danny Green and all these other options. And yeah, they might be able to get to it in a certain way, but it's not going to be enough that it's significant. It's not going to probably outweigh the mid-level. And if we're talking about dropping out money so that you could have a mid-level exception, have $9 million as opposed to $6 million, rounding the numbers, it's not enough. So I get where you're going, but it's not. The Lakers aren't going to have the room to go after Jeremy Grant because they trade Danny Green to the Warriors, right? Danny Green would fit in for their trade exception as well. Yeah, you could argue it. But are they also making other trades, and how they're paring down their roster? Does Avery opt out? Does JaVale opt out? How are they working it with Rondo? I mean, with Rondo, what's interesting about Rondo and cap room is that Rondo's cap hold, just put it right here. Rondo as a free agent, he takes up 1620564. The cost of having his bird rights are minimal. Yikes, messing up the formatting here. There we go. Okay, make sure I got that right. Yep. Okay. So, so look, you rabbit hole in me again, and that's fine. That's why we're here. Let's just look at it so that we're all talking about the same thing. Okay. Let's say they keep Rondo, and let's say they find someone to take on Danny Green. The Warriors. Okay. This is not me saying that. Traded to the Warriors. And we're going to put in fake. Okay. So no, this is not a rumor. And let's say that they also traded. And we're going to keep Rondo as a free agent. Rondo cap holds. So they can still use his early bird rights. Can still pay him. This is kind of what they did with Caruso. Pay him 10.1 mil, or pay him up to 10.1 mil via early bird. Okay. And now we need to punch this a little bit differently. Give me a second. Cut. Move that over. Let's count this out. Because now all of our computations, we weren't talking about cap space. Now we're talking about cap space. And we need to get to 12. And so let's say that they also trade Cook. Cook traded. Just trim that off. Fake. Okay, so we've got LeBron. We got Kyle Kuzma, Alex Caruso, THT, the Rondo cap hold. And then what we have what are called roster charges. These don't go away. And you're stuck with them. Now let's go ahead and put in the cap hold for Anthony Davis, and you'll see what the problem is. And I want to make sure I'm totaling this properly, so I don't think I am. Yep, that didn't total, so cool. Try that again. Okay. AD. This is cap hold or re-signing. Same deal. Same figure, potentially, depending on cap. All right, so let's say the Lakers have traded these 3 players. Additionally, oops. Make sure I get that right. Okay. Additionally, JaVale either opted out or was traded for no return in salary. That the same can be said for Avery, same. But we have KCP. That's kind of an issue. But you see where we're going here. Let's say that they have KCP, and what did we have, Matt? We had it. Let's do 12 million. Let's just do 12 million here. I forget what I did above. Let's take a look. 12.5. So let's go 12.5. Again, this can be a smaller amount. All right, see, we're starting to run into problems here. I forgot to do the math on that. There we are. Okay, let me pull it back up. Okay, so this is the amount of cap room the Lakers have. You see the problem? Not enough to do anything. You've got LeBron at 39, Kuzma at 3.5, Caruso 3.7, THT, Rondo's cap hold, AD. If you're going to pay KCP, now KCP's cap hold is 15 million. So this is paying him less than his cap hold. So what you're doing with Rondo doesn't help. You can wait with Rondo. So let's take out KCP. Lakers do not re-sign KCP. Now they have 17 million. Enough to pay for Jeremy Grant. Let's do Joe Harris. Maybe not, but was it worth it? So was it worth giving up Danny Green? Like if you were to make a trade and you were trading, I'm going to fill this out here. Give me a moment. JaVale, Avery, KCP. Would you trade this number of players for Joe Harris or Danilo or Grant? That's the problem. And you could say, fine, Rondo's out. Did that really make a difference? 18 million? 17? No. Doesn't make a real difference. There's no real way the Lakers are getting into cap room of note. They could trade Kuzma and trim it down and let all these guys go. You know, how low can they get it? If you take out Kuz, got to drop one of these in. 20 million. So, yeah, the Lakers can get to some cap space, but realistically, cap space for the Lakers is really a non-starter. Not really. It's not fundamentally realistic. All right, let's get back up here and take a look and see. Definitely took me on a rabbit hole. Down the rabbit hole. Okay, Savage. I want to do a sign-and trade with DeMar, but now reports saying Bucks and Nets are calling about him. Are you talking about the Lakers? So, yeah, you're talking about Lakers up above. So, if you're talking... DeMar DeRozan, to me, is a terrible fit for the Lakers because he can't shoot the three. And the most important thing to do when you're playing with LeBron and AD is to be able to hit the three. A big part of why Rondo worked as well as he did is because he shot the three well, and he didn't even do it in the finals that well. All of the shooters that the Lakers had were hit and miss at times. Sometimes really good, sometimes not so good. But if you're talking about DeMar DeRozan, who's a guy who he's kind of similar to Brandon Ingram last year. Brandon did not fit well with LeBron. The reason being is that LeBron would create an advantage off of what LeBron does, and he'd create an open shot, dish the ball. Brandon would catch the ball with an open shot, but because of the way he plays, he would then take the ball and drive it into the paint, into the mid-range, and try to create another open shot. That's not how you play with LeBron. That's how DeMar DeRozan plays. That's how he would fit with LeBron. I don't see it. Whoever's calling for him, good luck. He's a good player. He's really good at a lot of things. Is he good at fitting in on this team, the Lakers team? No, I don't think so. If I was Rob Pelinka, who would I get? There's a lot of... All right, that's not an easy question. I don't know the menu of choices that Rob Pelinka is actually looking at. We're talking about theoretical because we're saying what's possible. He may have inquired to Indiana about Oladipo, and they may have said, never in a million years, we hate all your players. Maybe they said that. Maybe not. Just making up stuff. We're looking at what's possible and what's not possible, and we're kind of setting the table. Is going to be restricted with Denver. So really up to Denver. He's not Arenas rule. But he is restricted. Wrapping it up. How about if we keep Avery, not KCP? Is Avery on Clutch Sports, Dean? No. Is KCP on Clutch Sports? Also, KCP killed it. He was, in stretches, their third best player. I think Rondo was the third most important player. Against Denver, in a lot of ways, Dwight Howard was their third most important player. But consistently shooting, playing defense, not complaining, being happy to do whatever needed to be done. I thought KCP was really good. I like Avery a lot too. And I think he has value as well for this team. They have too many guards though, but that's a different story. Lakers would be screwed if they didn't win championship. Now we will have ring chasers on vet minimum. Not exactly sure what that means. Strewed, is that a typo? Is that slang? It's Pat, point taken. Didn't realize it was restrictive. Only way it's worth it if you know. Right. So you have to get a yes from someone. That's the thing, is that most of the decisions that will be made won't be made on creating the space as much as you got a yes. Now we'll create the space, but you probably already have some things lined up. Ari said, I'm going to wrap this thing up. We're at the end here. We've definitely gone over. So just bring back everybody then. The Lakers might bring back everybody, to be honest. Adam says, this is more what's up, Adam? This is more PR related, but it'd be a bad look if they trade everybody away after Jeannie and Rob saying they're a player-centric org. Like, there's a certain amount of that. But teams have to make difficult decisions. And I would say that when teams win it all, they're less likely to make big moves. They're more likely to try to make one or two moves that can bolster their weaknesses. So I don't really expect the Lakers to make huge moves. And I agree with that on a PR thing. I'd say that the PR of even trading Avery is a little problematic, where like he was the one guy who didn't come into the bubble and decided to take care of his family, and you have to respect that. And then they trade him. You could argue it's not great, but you have to understand it is a league where players get traded and they still get their money, and it's part of the thing, part of it. And some of it is you have to make difficult decisions. And I will say that Jeannie as a human being is very, she has a lot of empathy and love for the players. She gets to know them, and that tortures her. I've had conversations with her about that. And also, if you look, you can find it, conversations that she's had either on video or in interviews where she's talked about how hard that is for him. Last couple of questions. Dean, for me, it would suffice to keep Rondo, Dwight, and Avery. Lakers have no problem keeping the whole core together. If they want to keep the whole team together, if everyone wants to come back, they can do that. Roster spots become an issue. They had 16, so that would mean no J.R. Smith. The pick coming in at number 28 probably means no Dion Waiters. If they want to keep Costa Antetokounmpo, I think that they probably sign him to a roster spot. That could be problematic if they bring back the exact same team and want to keep Jared Dudley. I think Dion's spot goes first, then Jared, if they need to keep Kostas. But it's possible that they trade something, or they don't use their number 28 on a player who's coming right away. So lots of possibilities. Savage, and I think we're wrapping up here. This will be the last one. Last question, at least that I plan to answer. So I've noticed this from doing this job for, we're wrapping up if you guys want to drop out, but I'll give my last answer. This is to Dean, not to Dean, this is to Savage, who's complaining about Danny Green and Kuzma making mistakes and missing open threes, playing poorly. My experience from doing this for a very, very, very long time, and I was a fan of basketball before this, but I started covering around 2002. In all of the championship teams I've covered, or from a distance like the Warriors or from the LeBron teams or the Spurs teams or whatever, there's always somebody who's not doing enough for the fans, and they get a lot of negativity. There always seems to be like one guy that is the punching bag. I mean, it's been at times Derek Fisher, Rick Fox, Robert Horry for his play during the regular season. Like you can go, I could point out at the time, like I remember guys, I'd have to think about like who was the whipping boy, the person that people would complain about. And the reality is like there are only a couple of players who are at that level, like LeBron and AD or Kobe and Shaq or Powell. And even those players are very flawed as players. Like there are weaknesses in all their games. LeBron may have like the least obvious weakness, but compare his offensive skill set of moves to Kobe's. Kobe had an array of skills than LeBron has. Shaq is way bigger than LeBron, right? We can go like so, but these are imperfect players. But when we start to get to the guys who are making up the rest of the team, they're going to be filled with guys who are not consistent and not great all the time. And if you replace them with other players, those guys aren't going to be great either because they're not getting the touches that they're used to. They're barely touching the ball. Their entire focus is on defense. So kind of wrap it up. Go rewatch the Rockets series and watch the effort made by Danny Green and KCP and Kuzma in that series in executing a game plan that really destroyed the Rockets. And understand that their job was more about that than it was about making good plays on offense, hitting shots, scoring 16, 18 points. Yes, it would be great if they could hit wide open shots. The Lakers posted through the playoffs almost 5-5, right? Had won 6-game series. It was a pretty easy playoffs under the circumstances. So if I ask you of anything, try not to hate on the players. They're not as good as LeBron and AD. They're not as good as Kobe. They're not as good as the best players of all time. They're not. They're role players, and they're flawed. But everyone on this team, you want to put some respect to their name. Anyone who fights their way to a championship and plays their role and contributes, you have to give respect to. So I try not to be that guy who's hating on the mistakes. The mistake Markieff made was ridiculous. Threw the ball right out of bounds. Whatever. Danny Green should have hit the shot. But there's a lot. Like, I don't know if the Lakers beat some of these teams without Markieff or without Danny Green. And it's harder to see with Kuzma or see with Danny Green. I'm on a soapbox here, so we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate everyone for coming in. I'll pop the link one more time if you want to look at the spreadsheets. Also, it would mean a ton if you could sign up on Patreon or contribute via Venmo or something like that for my time. Regardless, if you can't, you don't have the means, I understand. No problem there. I appreciate your participation. So thank you for joining. I'm supposed to say things like subscribe, right? I'm new on YouTube. You have to subscribe and like the video, right? That's what else they say. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, right? So you can know when I'm streaming. And if and when I have some time, I'll try to do condensed, like 10-minute, 5-minute videos that are exploring a topic. I'd also like to, in future streams, do a dedicated stream to each team. So thank you, Javier. So please, I want Laker fans. I see I have obviously by the chat we have primarily a Laker fan base here. So I'll try to keep the topics when we're talking cap to be Laker related somehow. So if I'm trying to teach a concept, it'll be in the context of Lakers. But that's not going to work a lot of the time. So we're going to go team by team and cover this league and prepare for the 2021 season whenever that happens. So thanks again. Follow me on Twitter, ERICPINCUS. That's also my Venmo and my Patreon, I believe, anyway. It's in the link. So thank you, and stream again soon.